We had a couple of bids for replacement of the electrical panel because it's actually determined to be a fire hazard. It had gotten wet on multiple occasions over the years, and several of the breakers were frozen. So we got a very competitive bid from Federal Electric. It's done other work for the municipality in the past, and he's ordered the equipment. We're hoping he gets that in and can do that project sooner than later, as we're concerned that the breakers won't trip properly if they're needed to. On the 22nd, New Jersey Fire Equipment conducted an annual flow test on all our SCBA units. We continued with our joint training with South Orange. On the 23rd, we did a building familiarization drill at Winchester Gardens with South Orange. Chris has continued to try and arrange for the joint training, and he'll talk a little bit about that later. And on the 25th, Chris and I participated in another conference call with the chief and Paul with FEMA with regards to Tropical Storm Isaias. We're making good progress on that. And a really nice story. On March 23rd, there was a gentleman playing basketball, the basketball courts right in Memorial Park there, went into cardiac arrest. Our guys obviously were right across the street, got there very, very quickly. He was a 33-year-old man, and he had no pulse when he arrived. They started CPR. They shocked him once, and he was transported to the hospital. And we actually got a call from the doctor this past Monday informing us that the patient was released from the hospital with no deficit. So he made a full recovery. So kind of nice story about the great job that the guys did, rapid response. I mean, he was lucky. Obviously, he was directly across the street from the firehouse, but the guys did an outstanding job, and the guy made a full recovery. So short month of February, not a whole lot that's going on, but that's our report.
All right, Chief. Yeah, always good to hear those those success stories of times when our guys literally stepped into a life and death situation. Both fire and EMS, and are able to actually have a life saved. So I don't have any questions on the February monthly. If either of my colleagues do, I will yield to them, and if not, we can move on and maybe briefly discuss the overtime. Mayor, Committeeman DeLuca, any questions on the February monthly?
No questions for me, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All right. So let's move on, and we can talk about obviously the overtime was way up in February, which we discussed last month. Back down in March. I mean, I wouldn't say it was low in March, but it was certainly a lot lower than February. Chief, do you have any sort of commentary or any sort of background that might help us?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we have one of our captains sustained a neck injury that initially didn't appear to be very bad, but it continued to bother him to the point where he was having like tingling in his hands and a little bit of balance issues, and further treatment and further diagnosis, and the MRI determined that he had pressure, and it required him to have surgery, which we had this past week. They had to go through the front of his neck and put a little plate in to stabilize it. So the captain has been out for quite a period of time, and he'll probably be out for an added additional period of time. So that definitely had an impact. And we did have, we have one gentleman that's been out on family leave. His wife had a baby, and, we talked about the new policy of the family leave, and he's taking advantage of it, but having those guys out for extended period has certainly impacted our overtime. I mean, I'm glad to see that it did kind of go in the right direction from February, but I would have liked to see it more like, 2020's numbers. But we do have to keep in mind that 2020, at this time, it was right in the meat of the outbreak of COVID, and nobody took time off. Everybody came to work. So we had a kind of historically low numbers a year ago. So I'm hoping we're trending in the right direction. I know that we are going to be impacted by Captain Giorgio's long-term illness from that injury. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. Deputy Chief Ariam, anything more about the overtime?
Yeah, I'll just, you pretty much covered it, Chief. I mean, just to break it down, For emergency overtime, which is recall, it was 36 hours. Training was 18 hours. Personal time was only 198. But the Captain Giorgio and the member that we have out on FMLA was 245 hours. So just those two guys, took pretty much at least half of what the overtime was. So
Yeah.
So without that, it certainly would have been lower. So and
Okay.
what's good too, just a reminder, we do have some time that's still out there left over from the previous contract. That all needs to be used by the end of June, and after that time is gone. So it's never going to come back. So like the chief said, we should be trending in the right direction. So we don't see why it wouldn't.
Chief and Captain, I know you didn't get anything by it, but just be cautious about saying officers' names when you're.
Good point. I apologize for that. You're correct. That's true.
And Chief, I'll just, speaking only for myself, I'll just say that, you certainly don't need to apologize to us for being up versus the first half of 2020. I mean, we realized the first half of 2020 was really a unicorn where your guys did a superhuman job, basically barely missing any time, for those first few months of the pandemic. So, certainly no apologies necessary for that. I mean, it was, those were some of the lowest months we've seen in, certainly my time on the township committee,
Right.
In terms of hours and dollars, which was amazing. In the middle of, when we needed you guys the most is when guys,
They stepped up. Yeah.
Stepped up and showed up. So, so I know that, as Deputy Chief Ariema just mentioned, we're also, because we carried over some time from the last contract, guys have vacation time they need to use over the next few months, and maybe have been using over the last few months, but yeah, so we certainly didn't expect to see the numbers that we saw over the first half of 2020 and the first half of 21. That's as those numbers were not realistic to expect again.
Right.
But I do appreciate the detail and the background. So unless either of Committeeman DeLuca or Mayor McGehee has questions on the OT, we'll move on to the next item. I'm not seeing either of them unmute or move their heads, so I'm going to move on. Chief and Deputy Chief, if you can maybe give us the status of the automatic response agreement. Anything new with Chief Sullivan over at South Orange, or?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of, I actually feel really good about finally feel like I'm getting some we are getting some traction. So we actually have a meeting. Well, first of all, I got confirmation from South Orange that they are definitely going on to the REMS dispatching, which I think is great for everybody. Very good for South Orange, and it's really going to help us out as well. I have a meeting on Friday at REMS, and I contacted Chief Sullivan. He's going to attend that meeting, and I think it's important that he sees the capabilities, the equipment, and the technology down at REMS. Maybe build his encouragement, enthusiasm a little bit. So I'm looking forward to that. We have actually been able to. Well, we hit a few stumbling blocks, but we have continued to go forward with the joint training. One of the unfortunate things was we really wanted to join us. It's part of the fire code that the career departments are supposed to conduct live burn training every year. And we've done it, I don't know if we've missed a year. We do it religiously. We plan for it. We plan for it both with overtime and arrangements with the academies. And we really wanted to get South Orange involved in it this year. And, in their defense, they weren't prepared financially. It's not a big ticket item, but there's an expense there that they weren't prepared for. So we thought that it would work because we would have been able to split the expense of the actual training and the lumber used for the live burn. Unfortunately, it fell apart at the last minute because they didn't have the money for it. So we're going to continue on with the live burn. They're not going to join us this year, but we tried anyway. So definitely the training's going forward. The communication's going forward. I've been in contact with Township Attorney Roger Desiderio, and I've provided him with several automatic aid copies of automatic aid agreements, in particular the agreement between Summit and Milburn, and then kind of informed him of like the dynamics of our departments and how we agreed to start with, although as I've always advocated doing a full response to working fires, South Orange I guess is much more comfortable just starting with the single engine. And if that's what they're comfortable with and it will get us going and get the agreement started, I'm agreeable to that. So Roger understands exactly what we're looking for, and I think he's working on that agreement now. So that should be done, I would imagine, in the next week or two. Again, I've been in contact with the mayor regarding the start date, and one of the considerations and suggestions from the South Orange side was to coordinate it with them coming online with REMS. My concern with that was that might take longer than we expect. Hopefully it'll happen quickly, but how things work. And we kind of agreed that it better start sooner than later. It'll be more effective and more coordinated when they're on REMS, but we can work through that. We can. So in my opinion, as soon as we have that agreement back from Roger and the attorney from South Orange agrees to it, we can start with the automatic response as soon as that occurs, and then push that, the communications part of it through as quickly as possible. As quickly as possible. So, that's pretty much it. Unless again, Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just piggyback on what you said with the training. It's been a little difficult since that we haven't done any training since the Winchester Gardens training. So like the chief said, I reached out to Morris County Fire Academy to get pricing, and there's the cost for the course, and then there's cost for lumber. So I reached out to South Orange. I said, listen, why don't we split it? I'll cover the cost of sending the guys and paying for the instructors if you guys want to cover the lumber. And apparently they don't have a line item for training in their budget. So they had to ask at a town meeting for money to go to the training. So, and apparently the money was not approved. So that's what I was told. They're going to ask again, so I'm hoping that it's not a dead issue. We are planning on going in June, so I'm hoping that by the time June comes, maybe they can work something out. South Orange is supposed to pick up a place that we're going to do a walkthrough there, and I haven't heard anything back yet. So we're trying, but it's slow going. So.
Chris, also, if you would mention the acquired property from DCH that we were able to train with, just bring them up to date on how we took advantage of that opportunity.
Sure. So as you're all aware, I had sent out the email, just letting you know that we had the training. DCH actually, when I was a captain in the Bureau about a year and a half ago, DCH Al from there had offered the house, and he said, we're going to be expanding the parking lot. So it's a vacant house. And I said, let me know when you're ready to, demolish it. He called me up, a couple weeks ago. He said, yeah, we're doing it. It was great. We can go to the academy all day long, but there's nothing like having an actual house. And one of the things we found out is we put guys up on the roof, and as they were doing what they were supposed to do, which was sound the roof, to make sure that it wasn't soft. Well, it was soft. And so we ended up not being able to do any roof work. And again, we can go to the academy all day long, but getting a house like that's real world stuff. So it was really good. It was a little bit of a tough spot right on Valley Street, but as always, the guys did, things right. Nobody got hurt. Everybody's safe. No equipment got damaged. So it was, it was priceless, really. So.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Because, it's, you never know what card's going to come up next in the deck, right? So, all right. Well, Chief, Deputy Chief, I appreciate that, and I certainly know you guys, it's not for a lack of trying on your end. And I am glad to hear the REMS dispatch news. This is, as slow as the progress has been, it certainly has been substantial. If you take a sort of a long view over the last year or two, the needle has moved.
Right.
Mayor, Committeeman DeLuca, any update on the consolidation front that's worth sharing?
Yeah, I'll just, a couple quick things. we've had a series of meetings in the last month, and really good progress. I want to thank the chief, the deputy chief, and the team for providing a lot of information to our consultant to help revise or tweak, I should say, our document, which will be ready for your consumption and others shortly, Mr. Chairman. But I think we've had some very, very productive meetings with South Orange. I'm excited about where we are right now because we had the data, we had the input of the chiefs and deputy chiefs and other key stakeholders from respective fire departments. And we've done some deep dive into some of the key issues, such as EMS, for example, and really I think we've come to a pretty good agreement. So we're in a very good place. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to reconvene again, and then we'll kind of open up to a larger audience of where we are. So that's the report. Mr. DeLuca, please feel free to add in.
I'm good. You covered it.
Thank you. Greg, we yield the floor back to you.
Looks like he's frozen there.
Yeah, frozen,
Yeah.
Okay,
There he is.
There he is.
sorry, I cut out for a minute, but now I'm back. Are we ready to move on?
Yes.
All right. I don't have anything else on the agenda other than the item the mayor added, which I think it looks like Captain Alvarez is actively fighting a fire.
I was just gonna say, what is he doing? What?
Hey, see, I gotta get a different view here because I'm on my phone today.
He's doing what we pay him for.
Yeah.
He's just doing the trust.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Maple's not
Joe-
on fire. That's at the academy. It has nothing to do with Maple.
Yeah.
Joe is one of your kids where you're like, yep, that's our kid. Yep. Yep, he's with us.
Yeah, this is hold on. This is while I'm working with you guys, I'm also working with the academy at the same time.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
This is what you get. This is what you get. You know, this is what we get when we have Zoom public safety meetings. You know,
Yes, exactly.
we never actually got to view live fires when we had these at the OEM building, fortunately.
There you go.
All right.
All right.
Kid at Christmas.
So the other item on the agenda was actually one. I'll actually turn it over to Mayor McGee. He had to do with the radios. So I don't know. The mayor can kick that one off, and then I think Captain Alvarez is here to talk about that. But not my item, so I'll just turn over the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll go very quick. Essentially, in a collaborative effort, and not just with South Orange, but with several other municipalities in the region. We've had an issue with what we call the repeaters on our radios, whereas I understand, and I'm going to quickly let Chris and Joey jump in here, is that, in certain situations, when our firefighters are in situations such as in basements or other areas where there's a lot of heavy tangible things between, say, the radio tower and the radio, that sometimes they lose signals and they lose touch with each other. So Motorola, by the state, has been allocated, I think it's $60 million to put repeaters up, which are ways to help strengthen the signal from radio to, say, another antenna and so forth, so that they're aligned and have a stronger line of communication. So there was a meeting a couple of weeks ago to talk about that with Motorola, and there were key stakeholders at that meeting, including our deputy chief, our chief, as well as Captain Alvarez. And so what we're looking to do is not just in a collaborative effort with South Orange, but really across the region, find a ways where we could help improve our radio communications. Part of this program is they're going to look for high antenna or towers or high points throughout our municipalities. For example, Seton Hall has a huge antenna up there where they could put repeaters up that would help strengthen the overarching signal. So that anytime that there is any signal, be it signal 11, any signal, and our firefighters are out there, that they know that they're fully online, not to worry about anything. So that's my understanding. I'm going to quickly yield the floor to the experts. Deputy
Joe,
Chief
I'll
and
start
Joey
with-
take it.
I'll start with the basics, and I'll let Joe kind of provide the technical aspect of it. So,
Sure.
when we originally got into this new system, the concept was that, the way we used to work was we were UHF, ultra high frequency system, and other departments would be VH, very high frequency. And then you had, West Orange and the truncate. We were all on different systems, right? And we made it work. We got multiple portables and we figured out ways to work with one another, but it was kind of silly. So now they do what's called this narrow banding. They wanted everybody to eventually get onto this 700 band system. And it wasn't inexpensive. Obviously, it was an expensive endeavor, but the concept is that everybody's going to be plenty of bandwidth for everybody. And it's going to allow us to have multiple channels so that we can have like our own channel and a fireground channel. And also when we work with adjacent municipalities and mutual aid calls, it's as simple as, changing over to their frequency from our radios. Now, Captain Alvarez is our radio expert. He advised us properly that we should buy what are called multiband radios, so that until everybody is on this system, at first it was Milburn was still on VHF, so we could, in a multiband radio, we could switch over to VHF and still be in communication with Milburn, and in Newark and whatever. So now everybody's gravitating towards this new system. What we found once we got it was that our ultra high frequency system was pretty good about penetrating into a building. So if our incident commander was out on the outside of the building and the guys are down in the basement, it would not only reach the incident commander, but it would reach dispatch. With this new system, it didn't have that penetration on structure. So what we had done, sort of adapt and overcome, we would go to what's called a talk around channel, where it was, instead of going from radio to tower to radio or radio to tower to dispatch, we were just going from radio to radio. So guys in the building could talk to the incident commander, but the dispatch was not hearing that transmission. And the dispatcher really should be tracking those calls. So now the deputy chief would be outside on one radio that was on, communicating with dispatch, and the other radio, which is talk around, talking to the guys inside the building. So we knew we had a problem. We figured out a temporary solution to that problem. And we were investigating what's called a mobile repeater. And basically that is a system you'd put inside the deputy's vehicle that would be on the scene of any type of incident like that. And that would repeat that signal to the tower, so there wouldn't be the requirement of two radios. That was one solution. And obviously what was happening was there are two towers in our proximity. If we were on the north part of town, it would be going to a tower in West Orange. If we were on the south part of town, it would be going to the mountainside. It was like the next closest tower. And you would be in town, you'd hear them transition over to the other tower. So I think the administrator or the president from South Orange willingly got involved with Motorola and said, hey, we're kind of sold the bill of goods here. And so the solution is, we need another site on another tower. And that's what I was away last week, but these guys were at that meeting with Motorola, and it sounds like they got some traction there. So we sort of have a two-pronged attack on this one. I think we don't want to abandon the concept of the mobile repeater, because I think that's a quicker solution, and it may even help us even with the new tower on those. You're in the middle of Winchester Gardens in a basement, that tower still might not help us. So I think we're going to try and start with the mobile repeater, and hopefully that site will happen eventually. We don't know when. That will help everybody out. So that's my perspective on it. Captain Alvarez, if you could clean that up a little bit with the technical aspect, I'd appreciate that, please.
Okay, Chief. So everything that Chief Weber just said is pretty much spot on, right? The crossband mobile repeater, that is something that's going to fix everything that we're dealing with. We really don't have issues on the exterior or in our valleys right now by us because of our proximity to the south tower. The problems are when we go inside of a basement. That's foreseen with any of our radios that we used to have. The nicest part about the system that we're currently using is when we go into that basement, we lose a signal, our radios actually talk to us and tell us that we've lost that signal. So we're not going to be putting our members in danger, because they're going to know when their radios go out of signal. The old system that we used to be on that the chief was talking about, if we lost the repeater system for any reason, we never knew. And we could be in a building and calling for help, and help would never be coming, because we would never be able to get that information out to the chief out in the street. So the crossband repeater that we're talking about, that would go inside the vehicle, just like the chief explained, we would go to our talk around channel, which is a very simplex frequency. It would go direct from that portable directly to the deputy chief's vehicle. The deputy chief's vehicle would take that frequency and it would then throw it back to our channel 1, which is the statewide frequency that, or the talk group that everybody's on. So it actually does fix our problem. It's not a Band-Aid, it actually fixes our problem. The Oakland Police Department up by where I live went to the state police system, and they had issues with their patrol cars because Oakland is a very hilly valley type of an area. They got their mobile repeaters put in their patrol cars, and now they have no issues. I do agree, President Collins, she did a phenomenal job. She obviously did her homework. She did hold Motorola and the state to the fire. She really, told them, listen, we bought this system, just like Chief Weber said. The system works fine, but it doesn't work fine when we go into a basement. It doesn't work fine when we go into a stairwell bay. And those are issues that we need to make sure that we keep our members safe and also for the residents. So she was really pushing them and Chief Sullivan to get them to go to this new tower, so to speak, in South Orange. What I did was between us, I told Motorola when we were there, I said, listen, yeah, we're getting the same exact issues outside too, because I didn't want them to think it was just an inside thing, because in reality, if we do go to South Orange for an alarm activation or a signal 11 or a second alarm, we're going to have the same issues. If we go into their town and turn to their talk group, we can then lose it. And again, it puts our members in jeopardy. So in reality, it was kind of a little bit of a white lie, but because we're not having issues in Maplewood, but we are having issues if we were to go into South Orange. So in order to keep our members safe, it was, yes, we're having issues too, to get them to put a transmitter on either the Seton Hall Tower, which is 485 feet, or using the water tower up at their old fire station number 2 up by Crest Drive. That would give us the elevation that we would need to get that talk group to work a little bit more efficiently. So all in all, we did give them a 1-2 punch between there was a lot of people on this meeting that we were having that President Collins set up with Chief Sullivan, myself and Chief Ariema. We were in there. A lot of chiefs from Essex County were in there. Majority of them were kind of silent. Maplewood and South Orange did really the meat and potatoes of the meeting, which was great. And then at the end of the day, I think we got our point across to them. The other thing is I'm going to try to bring up at the UASI meeting, because we are what's called the UASI region, which consists of Middlesex, Morris, Essex, Union, Hudson, Bergen, and Passaic. That's the area that we're in, and it's because of the threat against New York City and so forth. So with that being said, I'm also reaching out to Chief Daly from Jersey City to see if there's UASI money to maybe help us with that antenna that President Khan was talking about, maybe helping us or absorb some of the price, because in reality, that's going to help everybody, whether it's Maplewood, South Orange, Newark, Jersey City. It's going to help all of us because it's another receiver transmitter that they're going to put to boost our system up and make it more powerful.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome, Chief.
All right. Mayor, do you have any questions, or Committeeman DeLuca? Or does that cover it for us?
No, we're up to speed. Joey and Captain Alvarez and Deputy Chief and Chief, they're on top of it. So President Collum is in the steps of doing a little pushing. I'll speak with her probably later this week about the next steps to really push to make sure that money is allocated to get these things done, which I think Joey outlined Captain Alvarez outlined quite clearly. So.
All right. Well, thank you to Captain Alvarez for showing up tonight, for taking time out of his academy teaching to fill us in on the radio details. So, Mayor, Committeeman DeLuca, anything else for the chief or the deputy chief? I'm seeing nothing. Chief, Deputy Chief, before we open up to the public, anything else that you want to tell the Public Safety Committee?
Well, there's just a couple of things I wanted to mention. I mean, as you guys are aware, I have 2 more meetings with you and then my term ends. So we have to make preparations for the next step. And we finalized the captain's promotional list. I forwarded a copy to the administrator, and I was hoping we could just see if we could get those interviews on the schedule in the not too distant future, whether it happens sometime in May. That I think that would be great. And I also would think that you'd probably want to maybe at the same time or maybe not, and depending on how many candidates we interview, before I believe we're going to have multiple candidates interested in the chief's position as well. Unfortunately, as we mentioned in previous meetings, we do not have a deputy chief's exam, but we do have an exam scheduled for June. So that list is going to come late, and we may end up with an actor for a little while until that list is finalized. But I would like to get the captain's list established, and certainly, I know you guys want to select my replacement sooner than later. And depending on who that candidate is, I hopefully we have a pretty good idea who it might be, but it will vary on what the required training is going to be. So if we can get it done sooner, we'll discuss that. But so just something to put on the horizon. I'll work with Jerry, and I guess you could work through you guys and determine what would be a good date. But that's something I really want to address.
Okay, and Chief, remind me, your date is it June 30?
June 30th is my last day, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought, but okay. And so we'll certainly need to address, the promotional issues, and that's something that the public safety, well, actually, that's not really a public safety committee issue. The public safety committee will take that to the township committee. That's a whole township committee will have to set a schedule for that. But just so we know what we're taking to them, obviously we're hiring a chief. We're promoting a chief, and that can come from I believe it's from the captain and deputy chief ranks are eligible for chief.
That's correct.
And then there'll be a vacancy then in those ranks, and we currently don't have a list in those ranks.
Well, yeah. So we don't have a list, and we've got nobody left on those lists. So the other thing we have to consider, and Chris and I have been looking into it, is that it's going to create a vacancy obviously on a department. So we need to put somebody in the academy. Unfortunately, our timing is not great. It looks as though maybe August 1st is going to be the first academy available. We'll continue to look when some of the bigger departments get the go ahead on a budget to hire. They can create an academy class very quickly, and all of a sudden it'll pop up. Maple, we can't say, hey, we got one guy start a class. Doesn't work that way. So we're kind of dependent on how the other departments work. So as it stands now, August looks like the number, but we're hoping that maybe because of course we'll be short for if he's in the academy in August. That's a couple months before he's really back on the line. So he'll be short for a while. It's just the way the timing goes. So we're kind of keeping our fingers crossed. It's something might break on that one. We have a really good candidate. The next guy in line on the hiring list is a local kid, has a great, really, really good resume. He did very, very well on the test, and we're excited to bring him aboard if things work out well. So, and then we just have to wait on the deputy chief's exam. So I think we have, Chris, if you could follow up on that. We have 4 candidates that are going to take the deputy chief's exam.
Yeah, so the deputy chief exam is scheduled for June 19th. Per the ordinance, we had to give at least 90 days notice, so that's why we ended up going all the way into June. But if we give the test June 19th, we should have the scores back very soon. We could probably do interviews very soon. So I would anticipate probably by maybe the middle of July, we would only be maybe 2 weeks without an actual deputy chief. And then as far as the academy, Morris County, the Fire 1 class starts August 23rd. So like the chief said, if we waited a little bit, we might be short for a little while, but then it would be August 23rd to October 29th would be the academy. So
if I may, guys, if I may, and then I'm going to jump off this because I got to go back to doing my stuff here. Just so you guys know, Jersey City is going to be putting on approximately 40 members. So the next Fire One class, they're actually starting April sometime. They're going to start their hiring process. I know because I was with the Jersey City chief the other day. I can find out from him when they're going to start their academy and if it's going to be at Morris, and I can give you guys that heads up. So Jersey City definitely is starting a class within the next month or so.
No, that's
That'd be
good.
great.
Because Jersey City usually uses Morris County, so that
Correct.
would be perfect.
Correct. And like I said, I know for a fact that he just picked up 40 new members that they're hiring.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I'll get you, Chief, I'll get you that information hopefully tomorrow. But do you guys need me anymore or am I done?
No,
No,
you're good to go, Joe. Thank
You're
you.
good, Joe.
You're
All
done.
right, guys,
Thanks,
I'll
Captain.
see you
So,
guys later.
yeah, and
Thanks,
Jersey
Joe.
City is certainly, when you mentioned before, towns that if they do a hiring spree can sort of just create an academy. Jersey City is certainly on that list. 40 guys they'll create an academy for.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can reach out to the academy chief as well and
Okay.
double check with him. But yeah, and we have a very good relationship with them. So if we say, hey, we got to get somebody in next week, they'll say no problem. So
Yeah. So I'm sure we can make that a class of 41. Because I know a bunch of our guys, maybe it was 2 years ago, went through with a bunch of Jersey City guys.
And we all, when we scored at the
And
top
we-
of the class,
we
that's what we
smoked
expect
them
this
all.
guy to do as well. So
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, they may not want us in their class. They may actually want one of their own guys to be the valedictorian of their own.
yeah, we can't allow that.
no.
All right, so good stuff. I'm gonna unless there's something else, I'm gonna open it up. There aren't many members of the public here, but I'm gonna open it up for public comment. If any member of the public here has a question or a comment, you can either use the raise hand function or just go ahead and unmute and speak up. All right, going, gone. I'm going to close public comment. Chief, Deputy Chief, thank you. As always, appreciate it. I'm, and Chief, I don't, the June meeting, I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that one in person. So you may not get the cake that I did for your predecessor, but.
Well, that's okay. I appreciate it. We'll see what happens.
I'll bring something by the firehouse. I'm sure the department's not going to let your departure go uncommemorated, but certainly
No.
the township committee will certainly want to recognize, not just your service as chief, but certainly your decades of service to the township. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
We're not going to let you just slip out the door.
All right. Okay, guys.
So you guys, as always, are welcome to stick around, but as usual, I expect that you will continue on with the rest of your evenings and allow us to move on to the police without you. But have a good night.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night, everybody.
All right, everybody. Good night.
All right. Do we have there is the chief of police. All right. So we still have everyone we need. Chief, are you expecting or do you need anyone else?
I'm all good.
All right. So let's dive right in. It's April, so why don't you take us through the February monthly report? Debbie sent us the report, so no reason to go through the whole thing, but if you want to take us through the highlights of February and anything you want to call out to the Public Safety Committee's attention, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. As a superstitious person, I'm just going to say the UCR numbers speak for themselves for those who have seen it. Down 48% this time compared to last year. So I'm going to leave that where it is. We had 4 motor vehicle thefts in February. All 4 were taken with the keys or were running. And as far as we have no juvenile arrests. So we have no referrals to the restorative justice program for the month or year to date. So knock on wood with that as well. And that's all I have to say about the monthly report.
Okay. So Chief, it's not something I put on the agenda, and I don't want to put you in a situation to address, much less try to defend anything that happened in Minnesota. But, I know that we have, some officers who are trained, with the tasers. Could you talk about how many of those we have and what kind of training the officers go through and how many officers are trained? I think it's a question that, given recent events, we may get. And I was just wondering if you could walk us through that. I'm not asking you to address the current events. I just want to sort of know what's going on in Maplewood.
So I can say that we don't have any officers currently carrying tasers. And that is because we weren't able to qualify anybody in 2020. When I first became chief, I started the program. So we do have instructors and we do have officers who are qualified to carry them. We don't carry them at this point. So at some point moving forward, when training commences in the academies, we have to get our instructors recertified, and then we'll have our officers. So not every officer has the way we have our program set up currently is just we have training officers and we have a limited amount of tasers, so that way we could have one supervisor and one trained person at any time have a taser. So not everybody would have a taser. It would be very limited. But like I said, we don't currently carry them.
Okay, so we have them at 16, 18, but we don't currently put them out on the street because no one is currently certified to carry because we weren't able to certify last year due to COVID. Is that basically right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. That's, does anyone else have any questions on that? I just figured while we had the chief, I just wanted to, I anticipate we may be getting some questions on that given current events. Chief, I don't have any other questions on the February monthly, the UCR, the crime trends, or the overtime. Any youth justice? Sorry, I didn't catch it. Were there any youth restorative justice referrals?
No, as I indicated, we haven't had a juvenile, knock on wood. We haven't had a juvenile arrest yet.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, that takes us through, pretty quickly, unless either of my colleagues has questions, the first 4 items on the agenda. Any questions on February monthly overtime, UCR, crime trends? Okay.
The only thing you'll see on overtime is, and you have the documents, is just the cost increase that were contractual. Other than that, overtime is down.
Yeah. So I didn't have any questions on that.
Yeah.
That was not unexpected. Community board on police, most of the last meeting, I don't know whether Chief, you had a chance to talk to Deputy Chief Sally. A lot of the last meeting was an update on the report on traffic stops.
Yes.
We actually have Piper Davenport, who is the youth representative on the community board on police, who's here tonight. If Piper wants to say anything, she'd certainly welcome either now or during public comment. Otherwise, I don't think there's, there are some things the community board on police has before the township committee, certainly, in terms of the crisis intervention, some of the ordinance, the changes to the ordinance for the community board on police, the charter.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, but I don't think there's anything the Public Safety Committee has to deal with tonight in terms of the Community Board on Police. So moving on to the next item would be, this is actually Committeeman DeLuca's item, an update on the rates for the off-duty police officers.
Yes, thank you. So I'm gonna share the ordinance. So the ordinance was put together. I looked at three other towns, and we did a little picking and choosing. This was reviewed by the chief, Roger Desiderio, and Joe Cologe. A couple of things, it codified in an ordinance a lot of the information we had in a standard operating procedure. It also added things that we didn't, made clear that the primary responsibility is to be a police officer and that the side jobs are secondary to that. We talked about this proper behavior as an off-duty officer, things like that. It cleared up a little bit requests for service. The escrow account, that was something that really we keep getting written up by the state, by the auditor every year. So this is to try to make it a lot clearer to the people who are using off-duty officers, that they have to put the money up front. They have to really assess how many hours are needed for a job. And it also deals with some of the utilities. Let's see, administrative fees. So we made that clear. We also exempted fees for administrative fees for organizations that receive permits and financial support from the Township Committee.
Mhm.
So I'm going to stop this one. Let me see if I can put the other one up. So then the other thing we discussed were the rates. So these rates here where it says police officer amount per hour. These are the rates that are adjusted for 2021 based on the new salaries. And then you see we go for 10% on the fee. So we created this second box here, public events that receive permits. Here are the public events: Municipal Alliance, Partnership Alliance, Woodstock, Columbia High School, the Boosters Club, events by the Division of Arts and Culture, and Oyster Fest. We also, if you remember, there was an increase proposed by the PBA for the school district. We brought that down to this rate, and then also made them consistent with Winchester Gardens, Short Hills Mall, Paper Mill Playhouse, what have you. So this is where we're at. We do have one suggested change back to the ordinance. I'm going to flip back there, and then we can deal with some questions. And the chief is proposing something, as we took a look at it at the end. With these requests for services, sometimes we get cancellations. So what we're suggesting is that if we don't get a cancellation, and I think, Chief, are we talking 2 hours or 4 hours before?
Yeah, that we require a 2-hour cancellation.
Yeah, so 2-hour cancellation. If we don't get the 2-hour cancellation, then the private employer, that's what we call the person or entity wishing to hire the off-duty police officer, they will have to pay 4 hours of the police officer's time. And that is something that's similar to Union and East Orange. And actually Milburn has a provision, a cancellation provision. So we're going to add that in. The idea is to put this on for discussion at our next Township Committee meeting, hopefully introduce it in May, and we'll be on our way to having this ordinance. And then we can introduce the resolution after we get the ordinance passed.
Question? I have two questions, and that's, has the union weighed in on this yet, Chief, or have you got any feedback from them?
I have had a conversation with them and they're mulling it over. So I'm gonna need additional, and I suppose you're referring just to the resolution on the rates. And,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think really for the most part, the only thing they're going to care about is going to be those numbers in the box on the left. I mean, they don't care about the administrative fee or a lot, or whether people get paid up front. Now that never affects them, because they get their money regardless of where the township gets its money, and they care about that box.
yeah, so I'm gonna have to make some minor tweaks to our SOP to keep it in line with the ordinance. So then they'll have a go at that and either accept it or not. But then as far as the rates go, I had a brief discussion with them and they've asked me to have another discussion about that. So I'll be meeting with them shortly to see what feedback they have on that.
Okay, and yeah, I mean, I guess the big question I think I'm going to have is, if in the event where, let's say, someone puts in a request, and let's, for sake of this example, let's say it's the school district says, we want 4 officers for a football game on, next Friday night. And we don't get 4 officers who volunteer. What happens?
So within our SOP, there is something called a extra duty or pay job sign up sheet. So anybody who signs up on that sheet is obligated to work other jobs as well. So if there's jobs that are not filled, we will go to the sheet. The watch commander will go to the sheet and order people to work those jobs.
Okay, so
It's a provision under the SOP for working the extra duty assignments.
okay, so if our officers, want to be considered for, for the road work and the other stuff, they also need to sort of make themselves potentially eligible for the football games and the basketball games, in the event no one else steps up.
Yeah, something that may pay less.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. So because partially my concern, I just want to make sure we didn't leave one of our community partners in the lurch.
No,
Something sort of, set up to prevent that.
no, our SOP covers that. And the rates that were established, they are fair and we've discussed them previously. They are the top officers, those rates for other than construction job is the top regular time rate for the officers. And most of our officers aren't even on that rate, at that rate. So they'd be getting a raise doing that job no matter what. Maybe it's not exactly what they would want, but nothing ever is, right? We don't get everything we want.
That's true. Okay. So I don't have any, that answers my questions on that. Mayor, we have been joined by the deputy mayor. But I want to, Mayor, I don't know if you have any questions. I want to thank Mr. DeLuca. I know he's done a lot of work on this. And I think this is definitely at a place now where I am curious to hear what the union's feedback is on this. But I think this is definitely at a place where it's ready to go to the TC for discussion.
So I would like some let's say comment on this. So here's the current ordinance. And if you look at B, the hourly rate, blah, 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 it gives the township committee sets it. It says based upon a recommendation of the Maplewood Police Chief and the Maplewood PBA. So this is how it's been operating for a while. We get the numbers, essentially we get the numbers from the PBA and we just pass a resolution. Sometimes the chief agrees, sometimes the chief doesn't agree, but the PBA provides it. The new ordinance, I didn't include that thing about the PBA, the hourly, so this is F, the hourly rates to be paid. will be determined by a rate schedule to be established by the township committee by resolution. So I guess input here is whether or not we want to include the language of recommendation from the PBA or not. I don't know if the
I like-
chief has a position.
If I may, when I went through this and you sent it, I liked that. I thought it was a good change. And I think it aligns with the fact that any employee of Maplewood really is under the jurisdiction of the township administrator and the township committee. So I'm comfortable with how you have F as is.
Mr. DeLuca, my recommendation was that you set those rates at the certain rates at the top officer's overtime rate. And then I recommended that you set the other rate at the top officer's regular time rate. And they will go up when raises happen, and they'll stay flat when raises don't happen. And I suggested that because I thought that was fair.
Right. I don't want to put that in the ordinance because anytime that has to get changed, then you have to go back in and do that. So we can do that by resolution. I agree with the mayor. I don't think we should, well, that's why I wrote it. I don't think we should have in there that, it's based on our employees telling us what they want.
Exactly.
There's no reason to codify that. They can effectively make a recommendation if they choose anyway, and we can choose whether to listen to it or not. So
Yeah, it's not in the CBA.
Okay.
Yeah, and they, that I think is the important thing. I think if they had a right under the agreement to do that, then it would really, we couldn't change it by ordinance. But the fact that, we can always choose to consider their recommendation. But I agree. I don't think we have to have in the ordinance that we're going to necessarily even consider, much less accept their recommendation. So I agree with that, Mr. DeLuca.
Okay, thank you. So the only thing we're going to add in here is the cancellation of a minimum of 2 hours, or else they'll be charged for 4 hours.
That seems
And Chief, that 4 hours goes to the officer, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I'm done.
all right. Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. So that takes us to item number 7, which is the mayor's. Actually, item 7 and 8 are both the mayor's. Police box update is first, and then Oakland Road traffic issues. So, Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours. Take those in whatever order you want.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just go first with the light in the emergency call box in the park. So the chief and I spent a good hour or so in the park canvassing Memorial Park on Southfield, looking for an alternate solution, as well as the optimal solution for the call box. I'm calling it the call box, the emergency call box, the blue box. There was conversation about putting it over across the street by the New Jersey Transit train station. So Chief and I went and did a due diligence reconnaissance there. And in the end, in taking into consideration the core attributes of why the box is where it is sitting in the best place that it needs to be for public safety. It does not belong, nor should it be put across the street. So that option is now off the table. However, trying to find an alternate location for the call box, if you will, out of the current location per the request of the conservatory, we walked the field. We looked for sunlight. We looked for sight lines and all the attributes aligned with public safety. And we did find an alternate solution toward the bottom of the field, close to the path by the duck pond in a triangular area. It has great sight lines, has sunlight, and would be an alternate option to move the call box, as we call it. And so I do believe the chief had this conversation actually today with the conservatory, so they're aware of it. So the options are pretty much clear. either we move the call box to this new location, which is if you were standing in front of the stage at Maple Woodstock, for example, and you look to your right or kind of went around the stage by the kids zone, it's over in that open space area. That is the alternate solution, or it stays where it is. And that's it. We've looked at it. Public safety is number one, and that is the decision. So, Chief, as the resident expert of all things public safety, if you have any thoughts you'd like to add, please do.
Mayor, as you indicated, I did meet with a member of the Conservancy. I expressed exactly as you indicated, where it is the best location. I didn't want it to be in any location that would be hidden, any location where it would cost us an exorbitant amount of money to move it. I didn't want to take it out of the park, particularly that amphitheater is being utilized so much. So as if you recall, the mayor and I stood where the current call box is and I said, Mayor, I'm just going to object to wherever you put it if it's not within this sight line. And that's kind of how we came up with another location for it. I suggested it to the Conservancy tonight, this afternoon when I met with them. And basically, they told me, okay, we'll get back to you. But basically, it's either going to be where it's at or kind of where we're describing, because I don't see there's any point to hiding it.
Thank you, Chief. And I'm with you 100%. It's so important from a public safety perspective that it's there for public safety, and public safety is number one.
And for the record, right, Mayor, we did try it.
It worked. Yeah, exactly. For the record, it works. We leveraged it. It worked, and it was the blue light came on, and it worked fine. So they are operational, for the record. Yes, that's right.
Okay, so were you talking to Deb Lyons? Is that who you were talking to, Chief?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, I think as long as we're having the discussion with the Conservancy and obviously, look, we have to make the best decision for public safety here, and to the extent we can accommodate what the Conservancy wants to do, and work in partnership with them to accomplish their goals without sacrificing or compromising public safety, we want to do that. So let's do that. And it sounds like we're on that path. So thank you.
So Chief, did you get a sense from Deborah as to their timing? Because I don't think they've even got approval from the state. I think they're still submitting their proposal to SHPO.
That's correct. That was my understanding. They want to move on as quickly as possible, but they have not received approval for that area yet.
Also, I think if we put the box down there, we have to go to SHPO too.
We as in public safety or the Conservative?
No. We as the township.
Okay. So then I guess to your point, Vic, that's a good point. Like, let's let them get their approval. And then once they get their approval, then we'll say, okay, you got approval. We are now, in good faith saying we're going to move the box where it doesn't impede on public safety. And they say yes, then we'll go to SHPO. They say no, it stays where it is, and that's it.
Right.
All right, cool. So, Mr. Chairman, I have one more thing, unless we have any more discussion.
Is that on the Oakland Road issue?
Yeah, and I think I looked at the engineering, planning, public works agenda, and I think Chairman DeLuca might have covered that this morning as well. And I did speak with the chief. So I think this one might have been put on there it's been addressed since it was put on the agenda, but long story short is a couple of residents have communicated some concerns on Oakland Road. They sent some information to us regarding the as we will define as hotspots. Like when any resident provides the township with information, we go to the appropriate authority and the key stakeholders. And in this case, obviously the chief and Sergeant Reeves with the traffic bureau, and they do their thing. So, Chief, I guess we're confirming that you're cognizant of it and you've moved forward with some mitigation tactics.
Yeah. So what we're doing now also is the first step in this process is always analyzing the data. So we put our traffic counters out there and our speed signs out there, because our speed signs also record data. And we like to learn what is exactly happening over there. So it's, at some point, engineering is going to want to know what the average speed is on there, and if it's just happening randomly, and how we can address those things. So there is analytics that happen before we just stick officers out there for enforcement. You know, the officers out there for enforcement allows for instantaneous gratification, but if there's an overall traffic common issue, we try to address it in at least a 2-3 prong approach.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that process, and half the battle is making us aware of the situation and using these prong approach to solve the issue.
So I just placed a police car there in the corner. So we did discuss this morning, and Chief, if you can work with Paul Kittner, because he's going to take a look at it to see if there's any traffic calming suggestions too.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. I had one other note, which, let's see. Chief, I got a media inquiry about South Orange updating and adding to their network of safety cameras and asking us about our safety cameras. You'd be the right person to direct that to, right?
Sure.
Okay. It's the Village Green that Mary Mann or Carolyn will reach out to you. But I don't know nearly enough about the details of our safety cameras to answer that, and I want the information to be accurate. So, and in terms of the cameras that we're adding over at the community pool, are you involved in that, or would that just be Ms. Mancuso?
Well, I was asked to review it on several occasions.
Okay, all right, so you may be able to address that too. I mean, my understanding is we're certainly not putting cameras like in the locker rooms or anything where it's external.
Yes.
Okay, because
well, there are some internal as well, but it's common hallways, that type of thing.
Right. Yeah, it's areas where people are going to be expected to be seen in public.
Right.
Yeah. All right. I have nothing else on the agenda or in my notes. Mr. DeLuca, Mayor McGehee, Committeeman DeLuca.
I was going to raise my hand. There we go. Okay. Thank you. Just the two things. Today we had a meeting at the Apothecarium with the Director of Operations for Terracent, New Jersey, talking about security, and was a good back and forth with the chief and his resident advisor, Lindsay, who knew a lot more of questions to ask than we did.
That's why I brought her.
Yeah. And also next Wednesday, there's going to be a briefing training for our officers, right, Chief? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important for our officers to know they're not going to get the in-depth behind the scenes that we got today, Mr. DeLuca and I and my team, but they're going to come in and they're going to talk a lot about what they have set up as far as security down there, a little bit about what their processes are going to be, so that way we have some expectations, how they're going to handle certain functions, such as pickups and drop-offs and certain other things. But it's important that the community, as well as my officers, know that there's going to be a substantial foot traffic over there compared to what they're used to. So we're going to have more officers in the area to be cognizant of the changes and be able to respond in accordance with that. So it's important that they come in and talk to us about those procedures.
And just I know some of you on here heard from residents about the fence. I solved that with them today. They're gonna put a new fence up on the side and in the back, so. And I'll relay that to the resident. The second thing, Chief, is we had a resident come to our engineering, public works and planning meeting this morning to talk about the difficulty of crossing Springfield Avenue in the crosswalks. And then particularly the one in front of the post office. So if we could maybe have, our traffic team maybe pay some attention to that problem. I know even my walks now, on Springfield Avenue, getting the cars to stop is always a challenge. Paul Kittner is going to refresh the striping on Springfield Avenue once we pass the budget.
Okay.
So that will help also because the striping is a little stale right now. And he hopes to liven it up with some new thermoplastic, and we can, if we can do that and also have some stronger enforcement, I think we might get people to slow down.
Okay.
And obey the law.
Chief, you may be aware of this, but there's a pedestrian safety grant program from the AG's office that's specifically designed for this type of enforcement. So if it's something that you didn't want to do as a duty assignment, I think you can get grants for, overtime or extra officers specifically for this type of detail.
Mayor might be able to speak to that. We just applied for 2 of them, and I think that was one of them.
Okay.
That's correct.
Applied for those.
That is 100% correct. Yep. So they're in the queue, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, budget years are what they are. Sometimes we get the money, sometimes we don't. But yeah, we do those types of details.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Luca. Mr. Mayor, anything?
Just really, really quick, and this is more not hot off the press, but Chief, just F55 Hughes came up again. Just an FYI on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a tough scenario. The complaints that we're getting over there is they're smoking marijuana, and there's nothing we can do about that. They're on their own property. We can address the noise complaints, but generally speaking, what we've seen there so far is the presence of the residents who live there.
Understood. Thank you.
It's going to come up tomorrow night at the Hilton Neighborhood Association meeting. So.
I can't enforce.
No, I understand.
On private property.
I think the issue is just the cars blocking the street, loud music, stuff like that. So we can enforce that.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's definitely making its rounds to Mr. DeLuca's point. So
I'm going to have 2 things to add at the appropriate time, Mr. Lembert.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's no time like the present. So, Chief, why don't you go ahead?
As you're aware, we have 1 vacancy, and the Township Committee has selected that person's replacement, and that person, we're doing an updated background on them and doing a psychological and physical fitness testing on them. And then once assuming that they pass, that officer will be starting as quickly as we can.
Good. And that's the 3rd officer from Irvington?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. That's good. So we don't need to, there'll be no lag time in terms of academy or anything. Just hit the ground running. Okay. And
until they pass their backgrounds and everything like that, at the next meeting or before, I'll let you know.
Right. But that officer is still interested, correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Very excited.
Good. All right.
Chief, after that officer starts, could you give us a breakdown of our officers as far as race, gender, years on the force. You know, some of us have been working at this a very long time, and our department is much different than even 5 years ago.
Yeah, I'll
And,
send out the updated roster.
Yeah, I think that would be a good story.
Okay.
Agreed.
All right.
I was laughing there for a minute, Mr. Chairman, because I was hoping not to get together again for any more interviews. So.
Oh, no, yeah, that we've
We'll have our vaccination card.
Right. I'm done.
The only public, I mean, we're gonna have to do some fire reviews, but those are all ones, people we've met many times, so we can do those by Zoom. Chief, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Yes, I do. I wanted to, this will be the first that I'm letting you know of this, and I'm presuming that you'll support this initiative. So the Attorney General enacted a directive that all departments in New Jersey will have to have body cameras. And we already have body cameras. So as a part of that directive, they have opened up a grant opportunity. And I will tell you that the grant opportunity does not rule us in or rule us out, because we already have our own. So I intend to apply for the grant for the body worn cameras, just to see, hopefully, if we can. I've been told that the allocation will be based on the needs of departments who don't have programs. And then once those departments are allocated, then they'll move on to doing upgrades for other departments. But if we're not in it, then we can't win it. So, so it really costs us nothing except for it would be a 5-year commitment to purchasing the equipment over the course of 5 years, that is, and to adhering to their the Attorney General's policy on body worn cameras, which we've already adopted. So we're going to apply, ask for the cameras and ask for an upgraded server. And if it makes it to us, then we would look to move this expense over a 4 to 5 year time period. It will require a adoption of a resolution by the Township Committee. But that's only if we're selected to participate. So right now we're just going to put our hat in the ring and see if it makes it to us.
Yeah, well, I mean, as a township, we're certainly all in on body cameras, and, we're not going to be changing that anytime soon. So, considering it doesn't require us to make any commitment or policy that's different than what we already have, I say there's, even if it's no guarantee of ever seeing a dollar, there's no harm putting the application in. So I think there's, you've got 4 of us here, and I certainly don't think you're going to hear any opposition. So anything else, Chief?
No, I mean, as we all know, the technology is old the minute it comes out. So we'll spec out new technology and see if we can't get in.
All right. Is that the last item you had, Chief?
It is, sir.
All right. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Committeeman DeLuca, anything else before we go to public comment? All right.
Hold on,
Mr. DeLuca is talking, but he's on mute.
I just wanted to know if the chief was hoarding paper towels behind him.
Yes. All PPE goes through me.
Yeah, so as the OEM, when we have a problem, we're going to come to your office for those paper towels.
PPE is like gold.
And Chief, I like that you like to stay lubricated. I see the Lubriderm right next to you all the time.
Okay.
Oh, come on. It's late and we're all adults. Stop.
Okay. We are moving to public comment. I'm going to open up public comment. We have a few members of the public here. First hand I see up is John Sullivan. So Mr. Sullivan, go ahead, unmute
Yeah,
yourself.
I unmuted myself already. Thank you. Just a couple of quick things. First of all, the call box in the library, in the park, I'm glad that the decision was made for public safety purposes to keep it in the park rather than moving it over by the train station. Hughes Street. Mr. DeLuca referred to this. I understand with the legalization of marijuana and people having the First Amendment right to congregate and do as they will on their own property. An issue that I encountered the other day after receiving a number of complaints from residents on Field Road, Porter Road, Hughes, Jacoby. I drove through the area and it was impassable. There were vehicles double parked, and then there were gentlemen leaning against the driver's side of those vehicles. And they were very respectful when I pointed out to them that they were blocking traffic, and they apologized and went back to allowing vehicles to pass. But I mean, I drove by soon thereafter and they were right back there again. One other thing, Porter and Field Roads. I'm not sure if it's a formal traffic study that's going on, but the trailers have been there, and I believe that there's the counters now. We want to thank the members of the community there. Want to thank you guys for addressing that, and hopefully it makes its way to engineering and we can get some traffic calming in there. So thank you.
Yeah, and also how that works, Mr. Sullivan, is that once our equipment is moved out of there, it'll go on to whatever our next area is, and then at some point it'll go over to Oakland Road. So it's not like it's an instantaneous process.
No, I get that, but we had got all the petitions that we needed, all the residents to sign, and submitted them to the township, and glad to see it's in the process. Thank you.
Yeah, so we discussed that this morning at engineering, and the engineer's on top of that. He's waiting for that traffic count, and then they'll figure out something.
Great. I think that was just installed sometime this week.
Right.
The counter
Yes.
itself, the trailers had been there, which, I have been communicating with the residents in the area, and they were happy to see that. So thanks. That's all I have. Thank you.
So we have a few other members of the public here. You can either raise your hand or just unmute yourself and let me know you want to speak up. Anyone else? Not hearing any further. Oh, I see a hand up. Jordan Muhammad, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, good evening. First, I came definitely pretty late, but I don't know if you guys have mentioned anything, but I just want it to be relevant to you guys. I hope you have been aware of the news that's been happening recently, and especially in terms of Dante Wright. Knowing that situation, that officer was very well trained, and yet there is another Black man dead by this institution of policing. And so I hope you keep in mind the many calls that we made over the summer, and that we will keep pushing for an incremental level and a transformative level of transforming our ways away from this inherently racist and inherently oppressive system. And yeah, other than that, I would just like to ask a question for any updates in terms of the aux source. Once again, love community to be involved when that's possible. Would love to know if there have been any updates on that, specifically in regards to how communities can get involved in what is being replaced. That I know you guys mentioned CERT last week.
So I'll turn that, thanks, Jordan. I'll turn that over to the mayor or the chief. Any update on CERT?
Yeah, so I'll take that one, and Chief, feel free to jump in here. But Jordan, it really over this last month, there has been no update. We talked about it last month, another public safety meeting. It's really, we had to wait till we come out of COVID and work with the county. So really, there's been no movement in the last month.
And there's no status change for the auxiliary program as it was.
Thank you.
And just an update, you mentioned the Dante Wright issue in Minnesota. And, I did ask the chief earlier, while it wasn't directly on that issue, it was a question that was inspired by that event about the deployment of tasers in the Maplewood Police Department. And the chief informed us, and, and if I mischaracterize this, he'll correct me, but that we do have a few officers who were certified in that, and the police department does own a few of those, a few pieces of that equipment, but we currently do not have that in the field because we don't have anyone who's currently trained or certified in that. There was no training last year due to COVID, so certainly until we have people who are able to retrain and recertify, that equipment is not being used by the Maplewood Police Department. Is that right, Chief?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the public for the police? Not seeing anyone, so I will say gone.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, if I could get the township committee members to stick around for just a minute after the meeting. Mr. Chimes can stick around too, though it's not necessary, but Chief, we don't need you, and I'll kick the public out. But yeah, I think we'll adjourn this meeting, the Public Safety Committee meeting. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to stop recording. All right.
Yeah, there's 5